Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I've developed an emotional attachment to Kansas football. How do you think I'm doing? I'm doing great. Rock chalk Jayhawk, baby.
Doing better than Texas. And
Mm,
I guess that's not difficult to do. But yes, welcome to our weekend recap show, looking around the nation at the biggest games. And since you mentioned Texas and Kansas, not necessarily the biggest games, but some of the more interesting stories of the weekend. And why don't we just get right into it and start in the Big 12, where the biggest thing happened, which was Oklahoma losing, number 13 Baylor beating Oklahoma 27-14 in a game where Baylor rushed for 296 yards against Oklahoma. Oklahoma rushed for 78 against mighty Baylor. Caleb Williams threw a couple of bad interceptions, got benched. Spencer Rattler came in, wasn't able to uh, bring Oklahoma back. Really, really just this is the performance we've been knowing like Oklahoma is going to have at some point. It's just, is it going to be this week? Is it going to be next week or the week after? And they went ahead and got it out of the way for us. So we do appreciate that. Tom, uh, is Oklahoma dead at this point, and is the Big 12 dead at this point?
you know, I saw that on the rundown and I thought that's an interesting question because I don't know if I feel 100% confident writing off any one loss team right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Oklahoma's going to make it through the next 3 weeks with just that one loss. They feel like they're going to get another one at some point because uh, both of their quarterbacks who have been hyped up as Heisman candidates at various points during the fall. Mm, I think they can go ahead and just make plans for that second weekend in December. Now, I think they're probably fine. They just you can stay home. Norman's lovely, I'm sure. I don't think Oklahoma's going to do it. I don't think Oklahoma State's going to do it. Oklahoma State would presumably have to beat Oklahoma twice in a row, in Bedlam and then again in the Big 12 championship game. I don't think they're going to do it. But if one of those teams wins out, I guess they could still make it. And I mean, Baylor a one-loss team or a two-loss team right now? I forgot to check that too. Okay, so it's just Oklahoma and Oklahoma State,
Mm-hmm.
right, with one loss. Yeah. So if one of those teams runs the table, they certainly have a chance. I mean, the Big Ten is only going to get one team in at this point. That's going to sort itself out. The SEC, if Georgia wins, is very, very likely only going to get one team. Cincinnati, I mean, we'll talk about Cincinnati later. Like speaking of teams for whom a loss feels inevitable, and then it's like, well, Notre Dame or Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, who's the Big 12 champion. Like, I don't know if you can completely write them off yet, but they're not in tremendous shape. I would say that.
I think when we talked about Oklahoma and comparing them to Oregon, I know I've said in the past that Oregon has to watch out. Oklahoma could catch them because of the back end of the schedule, which is going to be much tougher than Oregon's. Unfortunately, the toughness of the back end of the schedule means that they're going to lose. But if they can beat Oklahoma State twice, I wonder if that would be enough to catch Oregon, or if Oklahoma State can beat Oklahoma twice, because they do have a win. Oklahoma State has a win over Baylor, and then you throw in a couple of wins over Oklahoma. Is that enough to push them ahead of Oregon, or at least it should be enough to hold off Notre Dame from jumping past them, and probably enough to go past Cincinnati. So I don't think they're out of it yet, but it feels kind of like, what's going to happen. Those two, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, will split and eliminate each other, and then we won't have to worry about them. But until that happens, I think they're still in it, and we still do need to pay attention to them a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon is very much in that same boat. It's like Oregon, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati. Like all of these teams have been just kind of playing with fire very frequently this fall and just barely squeaking by, like multiple one-score wins. Like you can see it coming. You can see the train coming down the tracks, but the train is not here yet. It has not hit them yet. They are still standing on the tracks, oblivious to everything around them, but it hasn't hit them yet. So until that train gets here, all four of those teams are still at least theoretically in the running.
Now let's talk a minute about Kansas 57-56 over Texas in a pretty entertaining game, a game that Kansas was running away with, and then Texas came back and got the lead, and then Kansas didn't give up. And that's something we saw against Oklahoma, like Kansas not giving up, even though they give up a lead, and yet they still keep fighting and they don't just lay down. And I tweeted out on Saturday that Texas needs somebody like Lance Leipold, or even Chris Kleiman at Kansas State. Like those two Kansas schools have exactly the type of coach that Texas needs. Texas, the donors would never go for it because we need hot shot recruiters. We need guys who are, I don't know, shiny. We need Austin type of shininess. And none of the Kansas coaches are that. None of these guys who can build a program, because Texas needs to be rebuilt. It's not, the culture needs to be rebuilt, and you're not just going to just build on what the last guy did, because that's, the whole house built on sand or whatever, and there's no foundation there. And you see that. And to lose at home to Kansas, I think is that their first conference win of the season or so, and first road win in however long. Just not a good look for Sark, and it's another poor choice of head coach, perhaps, Tom.
I'm not quite willing to write Sarkisian off just yet, but you're right. That was their first conference win since 2019. Kansas has won one conference game this year, 0 last year, 1 the year before that, 1 the year before that, 0 the year before that, 1 the year before that, 0 the year before that, 1 the year before that, 1 the year before that, 0 the year before that, 0 the year before that, 1 the year before that, 1 the year before that. If you are keeping track, that gets you back to 2008, the last time they won more than one conference game in a season, 2008. And the year before that, they were 7-1, went to the Orange Bowl because, say what you will about Mark Mangino, he did get the most out of that program. So, Kansas, yes, Texas and USC and Miami are kind of like, they're all very, they're thousands of miles apart from each other, literally on opposite coasts, but they're run by the same exact dumb, stupid, idiot people. It's, Miami has we need the swagger. We've got to get the flash. We got the state of Miami. And USC is, we need a man of Troy, and he must, and Texas is run by the same kind of basic idiot boosters. And you have to, your analogy about the house is about right. It's like, you at least need to strip everything down to the studs, throw everything away and start over. You might just need to move. Like you might need to just like knock down the house and build something else somewhere else. Like it just, you have to get the, they are all about, putting in some fancy new appliances and flipping the house. And it's like, well, there's still black mold, and the foundation is, the house is slowly sinking into a sinkhole. And it's like, well, but we have a Viking range now. Like, well, that doesn't actually fix the actual issues. They need I think I'm with you on that. I think they need a program builder, because it's just, they have gone with Steve Sarkisian, and before that they went with other Steve Sarkisian, which was Tom Herman, and before that they went with Charlie Strong, and it's just like, and they just, before that it was Mac Brown, and it's just like everyone is failing in the exact same way. That means it's not the coach. That means there is like serious structural stuff in the program. Same conversation with USC, same conversation with Miami. Like every once in a while they'll oh, look, we won the Sugar Bowl, yay. Oh, and USC is like, oh, look, we won the Rose Bowl one time against Penn State. And I don't know, Miami beats Florida State sometimes, I guess. I don't know what their equivalent of it is, but there is like serious structural stuff, and no one is willing to admit that they're the problem. So therefore it's like, well, look, we built a whole new football, a whole new look, it looks like a Longhorn thing in the end zone now. And there's new stands and a new facility. It's like, oh, well, this will fix everything. Like, nope. Were you watching the Texas-Kansas game? And were you watching me like have an aneurysm on Twitter at the Kelly Stauffer, the color guy, who's,
man, that was a rough one.
He kept talking about the analytics book, like, you can't go for it here. What would you do? If you show me where in the your analytics book it says it, it's like it's 4th and 1. Like literally any analytics book you would look at. Talk to anyone who has passed like 6th grade math. They can explain to you, yeah, this is actually not everyone does it. It is not the conventional wisdom. It is actually the right call there. And when they scored, I had said, I really hope Kansas scores to tie because I want to hear Kelly Stauffer explain how they really need to kick the PAT and extend the game. It's like, no. When you are the huge underdog, you want to have that one lucky punch. You want that one lucky play. The longer the game goes, the better it is for the heavy favorite because they have better talent. Like how are you around football this long and you don't understand any of this? Like this, you should have just like picked this up just like by osmosis at some point, just being around football people. Like I don't know how you could be like so willfully ignorant about all of that stuff.
I think it's because the only football people he talks to are head coaches. And you know how risk adverse, not even risk averse, analytics adverse some of those people are. I did think Texas turned everything around when Tom Herman tore down the old locker rooms and put up new locker rooms. I thought that was going to change the fortunes of the program with the new lockers and everything like that. Maybe it's a slow build. Tom, let's talk about the number 5 Cincinnati Bearcats, 45-28 over South Florida. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this one, but another game where UC led 31-7 in the third quarter, and they ended up leading 38-28 in the fourth quarter. And it was 31-21 in the third quarter as well. Like USF scores a couple of touchdowns in the third. They do it again in the fourth. And this is with USF turning the ball over 4 times. Cincinnati turned it over 3 times. USF only had 346 yards of total offense. UC had 506. And yes, it's a 17-point win, but 2 times there in the second half, it was a 10-point game when it shouldn't be. And this is national TV, everybody watching. They look good early, maybe let up a little, but haven't done enough at this point to move ahead of Ohio State or Oregon. And the rest of the way out, they would have to win like 60-0, the rest 59-0 the rest of the season to really get us a serious look at number 4, unless there are losses obviously ahead of them and behind them.
I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that Michigan might move ahead of them this week. I mean, Michigan just had a really good road win against Penn State.
Unranked.
And unranked Penn State. This is another week where Cincinnati's playing a team with 1 win or 2 wins. Like they've had, Navy, the Tulsa had 3 wins. Like good for them. That was a real signature moment there. USF 2 wins. There was someone in Tulane was a 1-win team. And it's just like all of these games are like in doubt in the second half. If you are trying to show and if Cincinnati's putting these efforts out in the Big Ten East, how many games do they lose? Like if they're putting out the effort that they had against Navy, but it's against Penn State, they probably lose. If they put out the effort they had against Tulane, but it's against Michigan State, they probably lose. If they put out the effort they had against Tulsa, but it's against Michigan, they probably lose. If they put out the effort they had against USF on Friday, but it's against Ohio State, they probably lose. Like they are undefeated based solely on the fact that the rest of the AAC is kind of garbage on their schedule. They're not playing Houston during the regular season. They haven't played SMU yet during the regular season. And the AAC is down this year. Like it is not a good conference this year. And everyone wants to keep telling you like, oh well, they're getting everyone's best shot. Yeah, guess what? So is everyone else in the top 5. So is everyone else in the top 10. Welcome to the neighborhood. You're going to get everyone else's best shot. USF's best shot is not that good. Tulane's best shot is not that good. Navy's best shot is not that good. So if you're struggling with all of these teams, guess what that tells me? You're not that good. So I was really hoping that Cincinnati would be the one that like really broke into the club and it would be fantastic. And if they somehow upset Georgia as a 4-1, it would be this incredible college football underdog story. And they just are refusing to do what they have to do to get there. It's been, I can't even imagine how frustrating it must be for Cincinnati fans.
Yeah, because this is exactly the type of year that was needed for them to be in that mix. And they've hurt themselves. And I think they are to blame. And really, we can't say that the committee would never let a group of 5 team in. because we haven't seen one at its full capacity, or we haven't seen one play well enough to be really in a discussion, because only I don't want to say crazies, but there are people who are like, oh, Cincinnati, they keep winning. I mean, how can you punish them? And it's like, yes, they keep winning, but who are they beating? And they win, but they would need to win in a much better fashion for us to say, yeah, they are playing like they look like one of the top 4 teams, and they haven't at almost any point in this season. Tom, let's move to the SEC. Probably can just group all of this stuff together because it's all just a glom. Georgia wins 41-17 over Tennessee. Tennessee moved the ball a little bit. Receiver Cedric Tillman, 10 catches for 200 yards. It was 24-10 at the half. Georgia just 213 yards passing, only like 7.3 yards per attempt. But they did have 274 yards rushing, 6.7 yards per carry. So it eventually just becomes like every other Georgia game where it looks dominating, and essentially it is. But give Tennessee some credit. I think they were up early in that one, but it didn't last long. Also up early, New Mexico State up 3-0 to start the game against Alabama. I did not see what happened after that. I assume Alabama was able to come back and win that game. But another interesting day in the SEC. Ole Miss 29-19 over Texas A&M, which was a really ugly game. I was rooting for my Rebs, and they pulled through. Mississippi State 43-34 over Auburn at Auburn. Inexplicable. I think Auburn was up like huge in that one, and Mississippi State scored, I don't know, like 30 some points.
Yeah, 33 unanswered points or something like that. It was, that was not a good day for the SEC at all. Georgia looked like Georgia for the most part. It took them a while to get going. I think Tennessee had some stuff that was working for them, and then once it stopped working, it was like, and we're out of ideas. I'm out of ammo. Sorry, it's only the middle of the second quarter, but I'm out of ammo. I can throw my gun at them once, and then I'm done. That was basically Tennessee's day. Georgia's good. Georgia's very good. Georgia's, I think, the best team in the country this year. I still don't think they're unbeatable. I still, there's a reason Tennessee has lost 4 games this year. This was not a top 5 win for Georgia. So, it was fine. The Alabama game, yes, my favorite moment on Saturday, before the Kansas win, my favorite moment on Saturday was UConn was up 7-0 on Clemson, and New Mexico State was up 3-0 on Alabama. And, it was, even as it was happening, it was like, I was like, oh, okay, they're doing the UMass Florida State thing from a couple weeks earlier, where UMass, I think, recovered a fumble on the opening kickoff, kicked a field goal to take a 3-0 lead, and then lost, 67-3 or something. The Alabama New Mexico State game ended 59-3, but they will always have the few glorious moments at the beginning when they were beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa. That was not a good day for the SEC, though, because you had Auburn lost, Texas A&M lost. Like everyone is, all these teams that were like, maybe if everything breaks right, they could sneak, they could be the team that sneaks in. Like, nope, they are out. Those teams are out. So now, like, well, maybe Ole Miss if everything breaks right, but I mean, they're not going to be in the SEC championship game because they already lost the tiebreaker to Alabama. So I feel like they're probably out as well. So yeah, I mean, it's basically Georgia, Alabama, or no one for the SEC. And Georgia's almost certainly going to get in. Even if they lose the SEC championship game, it feels like they're probably getting in anyway. But Alabama probably has to win. They have to beat out Auburn. They have to beat Georgia to get in. I think it is more likely than at any point before that the SEC only gets 2 teams this year, or only has 2 teams that are even possibilities this year, and very likely only gets 1 in.
Yeah, Ole Miss having 2 losses, and we know there's a possibility that a slim possibility a 2-loss team can get in there, but I think that 2-loss team has to be Alabama at this point. And if Georgia loses twice, they're not going to be in, because one of those losses is going to be hideous if it happens, because it would be either Georgia Tech or the SEC East. I don't even know who they have left.
I think they have Charleston Southern or someone. I think they have their.
So are they done in the SEC then?
I think they have SEC SoCon Challenge weekend next week, I believe.
So, yeah. So yes, that might be enough. If they lost one of those, might be enough to knock them out. We did not mention the Florida Gators,
Oh,
70-52 champions over Samford. Samford led 42-35 at the half. They were able to do all of this, score 52 on Florida. They're like no Gator turnovers. It was just Samford just throwing the ball all over the field. Emory Jones ended up with I think a Florida record 550 yards of total offense, threw for like 460 some against. You know how bad Samford's pass defense is when Emory Jones is throwing for 400 yards on you. And that one was, I ended up watching some of that at the end. It was so close in the end. Samford kicked a field goal in the fourth quarter to give you an idea that, because I think they kicked a field goal to make it 45-42 or something like that. And then Florida ends it with two touchdowns, and they're 56-52 to get it to within 4. The end of the Dan Mullen era is running spectacularly at this point.
I mean, the natural comparison for everyone there was the time they lost to Georgia Southern, which I think was the end of the Muschamp era. I'm getting my terrible Florida coaching tenures mixed up, but that was a really, really bad loss. But that was one where they couldn't score. This one, they couldn't stop anyone. They could not stop anybody. And we've talked about EPA in the show before, expected points added. So like the number of points you were better than your better than the you would expect to, I've got the ball in the 50 and it's 1st and 10. My expected number of points I'm going to score on this drive is 3.6. If I have a 20-yard pass, that means my expected number of points on this drive has now gone up. If I have a bad play, it goes down. So Florida's Samford's total EPA, expected points added, 24 points better than you would have expected, because they were that good on offense and special teams and all that kind of stuff. Florida's offensive EPA. I have never seen this number before in one of these. 51.59. 51 points better than you would expect. Samford does not have a great defense. I think that's a safe thing to say. But it was, they didn't stop Florida really all day, but yeah, for Florida to fire Todd Grantham, their defensive coordinator, and then roll that out, like, I am not a schematic genius, but it seems like when you have the talent advantage that Florida has over Samford, you should be able to have like 2 defensive calls and get off the field at least like half the time. Like, you're going to give up 30 points, but when you have Florida level talent and you're going against Samford level talent, it doesn't seem like it needs to be that complicated.
No, Samford throwing for over 400 yards. You would think your pass rush would be able to interrupt some of that. So let's move to another classic Oregon win this year. Number 3 Oregon, 38-24 over Washington State in Oregon and Eugene. And this was 14-14 at the half. It was 24-17 halfway through the fourth quarter. Anthony Brown, 17 of 22 passing. Great job for 135 yards. Oregon rushes for 306 yards. And it's a nice 14-point win. I'm not sure if they covered or not. I'm guessing the line was probably around there. But it's once again, it's Oregon is one drive away from giving up a lead in the fourth quarter or possibly losing. They pull it out. They look the scoreboard. The score looks better than the game actually is, and it feels like a matter of time until Oregon loses. But I don't know if anybody on the schedule is good enough to do it. We'll see Utah here coming up, but just really uninspiring again. And I think the committee this week will move Ohio State ahead of Oregon.
I would think so. I mean, Ohio State was not perfect, but Ohio State for, the first half of that game looked a way that Oregon has not looked all season. And they were doing it against a ranked team, not an unranked team. And yeah, Oregon is like Oklahoma to me right now, where it's just like, you can, they keep doing this every single week. And it's like, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. You can see it. It's hovering there. And it just hasn't happened yet. It feels like it's just inevitable that they're going to lose. I do think Utah is their best chance. I am trying to find the Utah score from yesterday. It was not a good game. Utah looked really bad against Arizona, I believe. I'm trying to
38-29.
Yes. 38-29 Utah. I mean, Arizona. Yeah, Arizona has just kind of done that to everyone. Arizona did that to Oregon too, I think. I mean, they think they did that to USC. Like they just Arizona, I think, has won one game, but it's just been like week after week of just Arizona. Like it's the third quarter and Arizona's within a touchdown. How is that possible? It was not a good game for Utah, but Utah on the road versus Utah at home are two very different things. And it is going to be Utah at home when they play Oregon. So
next week,
that is I think where the ride ends for Oregon. And if they don't, if they don't win there, or if they don't lose there, they're going to probably have to play Utah again in the Pac-12 championship game. That is a good enough team. I don't know that I see Oregon beating them twice.
Yeah, I would agree there. Let's talk a little bit, I guess, about Ohio State Purdue. I don't know. We've covered it in yesterday's show. If you want to go back and listen to that or watch it, really, I think this, as I said, Ohio State will be number 3 on Tuesday. The committee wanted to see one of these two teams look better than the other, and I think that happened this week. And so you'll see Ohio State move up. Then at some point, then it becomes Michigan versus Oregon, and we'll see where that goes. And Tom, let's just go ahead and go right into Michigan, unless you have something to say about the Buckeyes.
We talked about the Buckeyes for like an hour 45 last night. I think we've covered the Ohio State game sufficiently.
So let's move to the Michigan 21-17 win over Penn State, unranked Penn State. 361 yards of total offense for Michigan, and 47 of that came from Eric All on their last, not their last drive, their second to last drive, the game-winning drive, where Cade McNamara found him wide open on a mesh route at the line of scrimmage, and then Eric All took it down the sideline for 47 yards, seeing a couple of Penn State defenders run into each other, allowing Eric All to run free. It's not a great effort, not a great outing by Michigan's offense. Hassan Haskins, 150 some yards rushing on 30 carries. And we'll talk more about Michigan tomorrow. I thought maybe, Tom, you might want to talk about what you thought of James Franklin in this game.
They got the ball back with, first of all, the first half, they ran a fake punt, which was like, why are you punting here? Why would you possibly punt here? They had 4th and 6 and plus territory on like their opening drive. It's like, why would you possibly punt here? So they line up for a punt. Michigan recognizes they're not going to punt here. This is a fake punt. They call timeout, get lined up for the fake punt, still don't actually defend it, so the play works, and then get the ball down inside the 5 and have an opportunity to go for it on 4th and 2, I think, 4th and goal from the 2, and line up for a field goal. And it's like, why would you kick a field goal here? And of course, it's a fake field goal, and of course, it doesn't work. And it's like, being dollar store Les Miles, like dollar store 2009 Les Miles, down to the clock mismanagement and wacky fake plays, like that's great if it works, but you can also just go for it from the 2. You have Jahan Dotson, like do a thing with Jahan Dotson. I don't care. I hate fades. Throw a fade to Jahan Dotson. I don't care. Do whatever you want to. You have playmakers. You have Parker Washington. Do something. You don't have to do like, oh, well, we're going to throw a swing pass to our kicker. Like if that's your best option, like, there were no blockers out front. So if it was like, if one guy sniffed this out, the play was dead. So guess what? One guy sniffed it out and the play was dead and the kicker fumbled and then they ran it back a little ways. And it just, you don't have to be that clever. And then at the end of the game, they get the ball back after a strip sack, tie game, 5 minutes left. And it was like, oh, he's just going to play for the field goal here. And they didn't. He threw the ball in the end zone a couple times. They were pretty low percentage passes, which didn't get completed. Kicked a field goal, and then ended up losing on the Eric All eventual touchdown on. Normally you say a slow developing play before the ball is thrown. That was a slow developing play after the ball was thrown, but he got there eventually, and Michigan does pull out the 21-17 win. The James Franklin thing, man. I know his name keeps getting floated for USC and LSU, and it's like, why would they do that? I mean, we just had the USC is run by morons conversation, so maybe that really is their option, but I think Penn State fans would happily like, no, you don't need to buy out. We please. Take him with our regards. Merry Christmas.
There might be something to that. I did like after the game, James Franklin said, well, we came into this game, we wanted to be aggressive. If you want to be aggressive with your offense, not your holder and your kicker. That's not how you be aggressive. You say you prefer a fade. I was irate on just not, who cares who wins, but the call 4th and 2 at the end of the game, they throw a 20-yard fade down the left sideline. And it's like, you gotta be kidding me.
I forgot about that. Oh,
Sean
man,
Clifford,
that was so bad.
Sean Clifford, known as one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the nation. So, why not 2 yards and you're throwing the ball that far downfield in a one-on-one, just, hey, go up and grab it. Not even like a back shoulder or anything like that. It's just like, here, maybe this will work. When they had been picking up 4th downs earlier in the game with the short stuff, and just really, really disappointing too. That's just the 4th call plays that James Franklin throughout his career. Usually it's against Ohio State, so it sticks out more, but just really, really poor. And I guess you get what you deserve there.
Well, and I think Jahan Dotson was out at that point. I think he gotten like smacked and was out at that point. So they didn't have him in the field for that 4th down, but it's like you throw it to Parker Washington. I think the guy they threw it to had like 2 catches on the season. Like, that's not, again, like you're being too clever. Like, just let that guy run a defender off and then throw it to someone else who you believe in more than the guy who has 2 catches on the year. I just, you don't have to do everything the difficult way. You don't get any added points for degree of difficulty. This is not diving or gymnastics. Like, just do the thing that works. Like, that's you have so many options. I do want to, I mean, you were slagging Sean Clifford there. I do want to say, like, holy smokes, that dude is I mean, that is one of the tougher human beings in the country. I think he is playing with, I think his ribs are still probably not in tremendous shape, and he is standing there behind an offensive line that is, let me be charitable here and just say terrible. And just getting drilled constantly guys in his face. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo looked like they were like starting in the backfield half the time on Saturday, and just stayed in there, played a heck of a game, and really, deserved a better result than he got.
I think at one point, ABC, I think that's who had the game, showed a stat of Penn State's two starting offensive tackles had given up like 18 or 19 sacks this season. And it's like, wow, like that is not something that I think Orlando Pace gave up 0 or 1 sacks in his entire career. And not to compare anybody, but that's a wide spectrum between amazing and terrible. And yeah, Sean Clifford, you see him sitting on the sideline and he's just like, every move, he's like, ow, ow, ow. And it reminded me of Justin Fields after the Clemson game last year, just sitting down and trying to get up and just being in pain with every movement. And so, yeah, that dude is tough. He's a war. We know he's tough. He's been played injured, 2 or 3 games and was out there still trying to do things. And the poor guy, like, they're still calling running plays for him. And he's hurting. And it's like 3rd and 7, but we're going to do a quarterback draw because we have to. We have nothing else. And he's like, let's do it. And so, yeah, that dude has like all of my respect because he is tough. And if they could just block for him, I think he could produce. He could be, dare I say, somewhere in between a Brian Lewerke and a Trace McSorley. Yeah, I don't just throw those names around.
And you know what? If they had that and they had a just average Big Ten offensive line, they probably win at least 2 more of these games. And, with a better offensive line, maybe he doesn't get hurt against Iowa, and maybe they're 10-1 right now or 9-1, whatever they would be. It is, I know you don't want to compare people to Orlando Pace, but you can compare them to, Thayer Munford and Nick Petit-Frere and DeJuan Jones. And I think those guys have given up like 0 or 1 sacks this season each. I mean, 19 sacks, that same thing jumped out to me, like 19 sacks. I was like, that can't be right. That has to be a typo. You're giving up like 2 sacks a game. Just you two are giving up 2 sacks a game. Like, holy Moses, that is atrocious. And one of those guys is Rasheed Walker, who, was he would be a very interesting nature versus nurture kind of. Would he still be a turnstile if he had come to Ohio State, where the offensive linemen tend to develop a little bit more? as opposed to Penn State, where they've just had the exact same offensive line for like 10 years now. And it's like at some point, terrible offensive line play is a choice. And that is a choice that they have seemingly made. And I just, for the life of me, when they were coming out of the Paterno sanctions and you're super, super shorthanded, like, yep, totally get it. Like, you're going to have terrible offensive line play for a few years. Those roster restrictions have been gone for like 5-6 years now, and it still looks like this. And there's no excuse for that.
Especially when you can also go into the transfer portal and bring in established starters from other places. Tom, let's stay in the Big Ten East. Michigan State with a 40-21 win over Maryland. Maryland commits 13 penalties in this one. I think maybe the difference here, Michigan State was 8 of 13 on third down, Maryland 3 of 13. Kenneth Walker 143 yards rushing, but it took 30 carries. They kind of did an okay job against him. Maryland was kept at arm's length in this one. They would get within 10 and then drive, and there'd be a turnover. And still, like, a good win for Michigan State. They didn't lose focus, knowing what was coming up the next week. This could have been a trap game, but I think they've already been trapped once this year, so maybe that kept them a little bit more locked in. So good win for them on the road. I am interested to see what Maryland does, their passing game does against Michigan this coming week, provided Maryland can do anything to keep Talia Tagovailoa upright.
Yeah, that's the question. I'm not a big believer in that Maryland offensive line either, and that seems like if you have a bad offensive line, Michigan is not a good matchup for you this year. No matter what else you have, it's not a good matchup for you. I'm going to be real honest and say I don't think I watched a second of this game because it was like I wasn't that interested in it, and there were other good games on, and it never was that close or that interesting. So yeah, I have no real thoughts on Michigan State. I'll have to go back and rewatch it, obviously, because that will be a topic of conversation later in the week. But this was one that it was like, yeah, I mean, unless Michigan State really Sparty knows, like Maryland is what Maryland is at this point, and that's not actually that good.
I was a little surprised when I saw the Rutgers Indiana score. I was not surprised that Rutgers won, but 38-3 at Indiana. The largest margin of victory in a Big Ten game for Rutgers, the largest margin of victory in a conference road game for Rutgers ever in any conference that they've played in. This has been a really epic collapse by Indiana. And again, they've played 4 quarterbacks this year. They've almost taken on the role of Maryland in past years, where at some point Indiana's going to go to a linebacker to play quarterback. Although I believe they have done that in the past. Chris Covington came to Indiana as a quarterback, had to move to linebacker, may have actually played a little quarterback against Ohio State one year. So maybe Indiana's just reverting to their old selves. And boy, this is not a great look for Tom Allen, just to have a complete collapse like this. It's one thing to lose a quarterback and lose another quarterback, but this is beyond that.
Well, okay. Here's I don't know if you've looked at the box score from this game. Have you?
I think I glanced. I don't even know if I glanced at it. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
What was Indiana's turnover margin in this game?
Probably like -4. I don't know. What was it?
Keep going.
-6.
-6. Is that good? I don't know a lot about football. Is no? Okay. Indiana's offensive EPA -30. -30 for Indiana, which also not great. Not strictly speaking what you would want. I mean, it's just the EPA graph for this game is just 2 teams just going straight downhill. It looks like a sledding hill, basically, just like right downhill, like a bobsled course. That's also not good because down is bad. And that's both teams. So yeah, I think this says a lot more about Indiana right now than it does about Rutgers. But I mean, good for Greg Schiano. That's 5. They're at 5 wins now. They have Maryland left. I think they get Maryland at home. Like that, they could actually win 6 games, make a bowl game, which is something we talked about before the year, and it sounded, a little far-fetched. And they dropped a game earlier that they shouldn't have. I forget which team it was now, but they dropped a game earlier this year that they shouldn't
Northwestern.
have. Yeah, that was it. And otherwise they'd be bowl eligible now. I mean, that's wild. And I mean, do you want to tell me that there's no chance they beat Penn State next week?
Nope.
No. I mean, we have seen teams check out before, and I think there's a possibility Penn State just kind of checks out. I mean, boy, that is a game that Rutgers fans consider a big rivalry game, and Penn State fans don't know that Rutgers exists. So, I mean, that would be a monumental win for Greg Schiano. It is at Penn State, so that probably not. But I mean, you can't say definitely not, and that's quite a statement on both of those coaching staffs, I think.
That Maryland Rutgers game at the end of the season is going to be for a bowl game because Maryland plays Michigan this week. They were going to lose that one. Rutgers will probably lose at Penn State, so they're both going to come in there 5-6. And we know both of those universities are trash universities, so they don't have the AP, they don't have the grades to. Just kidding. That's just a joke, obviously. Tom, speaking of jokes and trash universities, let's finish with Notre Dame winning against Virginia 28-3. Brennan Armstrong, Virginia quarterback, did not play, so obviously there was no scoring for the Wahoos. And we've said in the past, like, Notre Dame's just going to hang around and keep sliding up because there's going to be nobody that can beat them because nobody's left on the schedule and other teams ahead of them are going to lose. And I feel like Notre Dame is the bad boyfriend who girlfriend just gets tired of him and leaves, and he's just like, "You'll be back." That's kind of what Notre Dame is saying to the playoffs. Like, whatever. Yeah, you don't like me. You'll be back. You can't find anybody better than me. And they're just waiting for the call. And I'm not going to say concerned or worried but I kind of am, because I don't want Notre Dame in the playoffs anymore. It's been done. We've seen it. You can't just keep rebooting it. It's the same story every time. You can't. The ending never changes. Like this is the story of Notre Dame in the playoffs. Oh, great. Now it's starring, I don't know, John Stamos. I bet it's going to be the same as it was when it was starring John Hamm. It's the same story.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame somehow sinking into the playoffs absolutely ends with Georgia 31, Notre Dame 3 in the Orange Bowl. Like, I mean, if we want to do bold predictions for bowl season, like, I will pick that exact score, and darn well I will be right with that exact score, 31-3. It's just like, you think you have Oklahoma out of your life. Oklahoma loses to Baylor, and it's like, yes, this house is clean. We will not waste another New Year's Eve watching this garbage program just get dumped on in the semifinal. And then the gif of the Undertaker walking up behind the guy, like, there's guys standing there smiling, and then the Undertaker walks, like, that's Notre Dame. Like, oh, they're so bad, and they're going to do this again. Like, Jack Cohn against the Georgia defense.
Wow.
I mean, and the problem is there's no one left in their schedule. They have Stanford and Georgia Tech, if I remember correctly, or Georgia Tech and Stanford or something. I mean, in some order. They're not going to lose. So they're going to have one loss. So you need some combination of Georgia, Auburn, Ohio State, Oregon, Cincinnati, or whatever other Big Ten team is in there. You need them to stay ahead, because you are going to, if Oregon loses and Cincinnati loses, and the Big 12 doesn't resolve itself in some way, like, it's going to be Georgia, Alabama, whatever Big Ten team, and Notre Dame. And I'm already just exhausted thinking about how annoyed I'm going to be all of December. Just like, why do we keep doing this? Can we just like give them a bowl ban, or like just a playoff ban? We know how this is going to end. It ends the same way every time. Why do we have to keep doing this?
And the thing is, you're going to see, so the Notre Dame will move ahead of Oklahoma now. So there'll be at least 8. Ohio State, if they win out, will knock out Michigan and Michigan State, and Notre Dame will move ahead to them. So now it's just Notre Dame and Cincinnati battling for 5. We already know how they feel about head-to-head, and is Notre Dame's wins against what? Wisconsin, and that's
Purdue.
it. Like
Purdue's your second best win.
Purdue will probably be out of the rankings this week, though. Perhaps.
Maybe, but and that wasn't an incredible win over Purdue. It was 27-13, I think. I mean, it was fine, but
so Cincinnati having the best win being over the team they're being compared against. Is that Notre Dame's ceiling? The unfortunate thing for Notre Dame, the fortunate thing for America is there's nothing left to improve there. There's no, the data points that they're going to get aren't really adding any data to this. And, we'll see if Cincinnati is Notre Dame's ceiling. I'm not convinced that it is. And who's to say Cincinnati even stays in this? And Utah gets 2 cracks at Oregon. Now you're looking at a Georgia number 1. This will be the final rankings, I guess, if everything keeps going the way it is. Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Alabama 3 with 2 losses, and Notre Dame 4 because they're not going to put Georgia, Alabama in the playoffs in the first round.
Right. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And first of all, like, the entire United States of America better be on their hands and knees praying to their deity of choice that Ohio State beats Alabama, because otherwise you're going to have the most obnoxious 2 weeks of. I'm not even going to do the SEC voice. I'm already too exhausted. Like, just what all of the Cletuses are going to be saying if Georgia and Alabama win the semifinals. Exactly, and it's going to be every Kentucky fan is going to be standing there thumping their chest like, it's just. How can the best sport in the entire universe put Notre Dame in the playoff or Oklahoma in the playoff every single year? And so, like, you have 3 playoff games. How are you wasting one of them every year with those 2 teams? I don't understand it. And I'm already exhausted of talking about this.
It's so frustrating. I guess maybe that, but even having Oregon in it is going to be no better. I mean,
but it's at least different. Like, at least it is a different, like, and Oregon has a very good win, and
they have better players too.
They've got better athletes than Notre Dame does. They have some guys on the defensive line that I think would make that an interesting game. I would love to see Ohio State Oregon part 2 in that 2-3 game, and then Georgia Cincinnati in the 1-4 game. Like, that would be great. Like, let's make that happen. And yes, Georgia is going to beat Cincinnati, but at least those are 2 interesting games where you have stuff to talk about for a month. That's not just, oh, good, Notre Dame's about to lose by 4 touchdowns again.
So should people instead root for Georgia to win out, root for Oregon to win out, root for Ohio State to win out, root for Cincinnati to win out, root for Notre Dame to win out, and Alabama just slides and they end up number 5? And then you've got, say, Georgia against maybe Cincinnati, maybe Oregon. Like Georgia against Oregon and Ohio State against what? See, now I'm
Notre Dame,
Ohio State against
Notre Dame,
Ohio State against Oregon,
mm-hmm.
and then maybe Notre Dame, Cincinnati, or Notre Dame against not Notre Dame. Yes, Notre Dame, because we're trying to get Alabama out, just because 2 losses at this point, 2 SEC teams, that's too much. We'll talk about it on Tuesday, I'm sure, for our live show. I'm a little bit like you, where it's just like, this is, you can already see what's coming, but we thought we knew how the season was going to go, and it's gone a little bit crazier, kind of still ending up in the same spot though, which is maybe the real concern. So anything else, Tom, before we go?
Nope, that's it.
No,
we're good.
Okay. We are good. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Go ahead and hit that like button. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and that way you'll be notified when we go live or we drop a new video, anything like that. If you prefer the audio edition, just go to any of your podcast platforms of choice, type in Buckeye Weekly, you'll find us there. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.